I just walked into the oldest theatre in Eastbourne. This is magic, and you just, as soon as you come in, you just conjure up magical names who've appeared here. This is absolutely breathtaking. I'm here today to meet Alan Baker, my friend and former West End actor, and we're going to reminisce and discuss our show together. Hi Alan, pleased to see you again.
Hello Tony, welcome to the Royal Hippodrome Theatre, Eastbourne.
Yeah, it's quite something, isn't it? All the magic, all the red, all the, well, it's the royal touch. It still feels a bit royal. In fact, I think I looked it up, and when they built it in 1883 as the new Theatre Royal and Opera House, royalty had a big connection to it, I think.
Oh indeed, and I mean, although the first production here was a play, the second production was by the famous D'Oyly Carte Company, who included this as a touring date. But the theatre was never, I don't think, really designed for opera or whatever, and so it's become, over the course of the years, a house for variety acts. In the early days, with the days of music hall, most of the major music hall names, Chaplin, Mary Lloyd, Little Titch,
Rob Wilton,
all those characters appeared on this stage. So the theatre...
Houdini appeared, didn't he?
And Harry Houdini appeared.
I mean, he did a publicity stunt.
The theatre has got a tremendous amount, enormous amount of show business history attached to it, and it shows. You know, you feel it when you walk through the door. You feel that sort of feeling that you get, a little bit different from other theatres, but you get that marvellous feeling that that stage has been trodden on by most of the major greats in show business.
Well, we're surrounded by quite a lot of them on picture, aren't we?
I'm here today to introduce a great friend of mine, Mr. Tony Flood. Now, Tony started his career as a junior reporter on the Lewisham Borough News. He went on to be an editor of the Football Monthly magazine and has worked as a journalist on most of the major national newspapers of our time. Now, over the course of his career, Tony has interviewed and met most of the most famous and serious celebrities and show business people over the last 40 or 50 years. Very few have managed to escape his attention, from Muhammad Ali to Britt Ekland, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy the stories that he has to tell about them. So, without any more ado, let me introduce to you the author of My Life at the Stars and other books, Mr. Tony Flood. All the pictures around this wall are all the major variety stars that have appeared here over the course of the years. And it was a long period of time. This theatre originally opened in 1800 odd, so...
Yeah, 1883, and they modelled it on the Savoy Theatre in London. Well, the inside, the interior.
Yeah. This theatre has managed to survive despite it all, and indeed, because of the efforts of a good many of show business people, it still survives. And of course Russ Conway put in a great deal of money and support in this theatre to keep it going when things were really getting tough. The roof needed repairing and things like that. He paid for a great deal of it. The Friends of the Theatre got round at one time, and I got hauled in years ago and asked if I could help out in any way, as indeed did most other people in the business. And we did, because the last thing you ever want to see is do what we call a theatre going dark, or closing effectively. And this never has.
Well, it's seen better days, of course, and it still needs a lot of money spent on it, but Eastbourne Council did put a lot of money in to get its licensing up to date. And then, of course, I think it was 2012, about 2 years ago, it looked a bit dicey as to the future, and the hoteliers, Eastbourne hoteliers, stepped in, and led by Darren Weir and Barry Moon and Mike Lee and Jerome Farrow, they rescued it, really.
There's plenty of room for a variety theatre in Eastbourne, there's no doubt about that at all. Coach loads of people outside prove that throughout the summer season. People still have that yen for live variety entertainment. All right, they may not come in their hundreds of thousands, but they do come in their hundreds.
To be on the same stage as Charlie Chaplin and Max Miller and Peter Sellers, unfortunately I haven't quite got as big an audience as they had in their day, but I've got the quality which is important. For a half a century actually, I've been engaged in a profession that is frowned upon more than the banking profession, more than prostitution, yes, of course, journalism. Yet, almost everyone loves to scan the newspapers and see what journalists write and look through everything, even if they only believe one thing that's in the paper, and that's the date. I'm sorry I've got a checklist, but I've got a very short-term memory. Sorry I've got a checklist, but
Eastbourne is particularly blessed with theatres. There's the Devonshire Park, the Winter Gardens, the Congress, and this little place sits very neatly and nicely into that slot of variety theatre. So we need to keep it alive. Although the theatre itself is well over 1,000-seater, it's a variety theatre as such. It has always been a home for variety artists. Part of the tours that they would do in the general run of things would be a call a week or whatever at a theatre like this, the Hippodrome, the Royal Hippodrome at Eastbourne. And of course in its day it was highly patronised by trippers, people who were down here on holidays in the days when people didn't go abroad for holidays, so they flocked to the theatres here. I mean, I didn't appear here, but I can remember at the Devonshire Park joining a queue that stretched right round to the stage door. I also have great stories to tell about how Elvis Presley embarrassed Tom Jones. My contacts in Las Vegas, when we were out in Vegas, told me that when Elvis wanted to make a comeback on stage, he would go to Vegas and watch Tom Jones, and he'd think nothing of climbing up on stage and performing alongside Tom. Well, I suppose to Tom Jones this is very praiseworthy and quite a compliment at first, but of course Tom Jones is a solo artist, and this got very annoying, so much so that when Elvis used to bowl up, Tom Jones would be heard saying to his stage manager, "Hide the microphone, Presley's in again." Theatres like this give an outlet to the kids that are not at the top of the ladder or even halfway up it, or perhaps even just about starting, that they can have a gig in here for a couple of nights. It gives them a taste of what an audience and what a theatre is like, and they do come to that. Modern pop stars rekindled their careers in theatres like this. You know, when they finish with the records, they will often tour, and they will tour in theatres like the Royal Hippodrome.
George liked to share some great anecdotes, and of course you may or may not recall hearing about how this Irish bellboy came up to his bedroom to bring champagne which he'd ordered, and he was entertaining Miss World, and there she was lying on his bed in not much clothing, and also on the bed were scattered £50 and £20 notes, his winnings from the casino, and the Irish bellboy said, "George, can you tell me where it all went wrong?"
Here we are. This is a part of the theatre that the public very rarely ever see, and you're being subjected to something which only actors invariably have to do, which is to be made up. Not very much these days. In my day there was the stick grease paint, so it was always a bit of a chore. I had to get into the theatre sometimes half an hour to an hour earlier in order to make up for a role. But these days, as in everything else, modernism has come into it, and we use pan makeup, and we don't use so much, mainly because the lights in theatres now are considerably less than what they used to be in the days when this theatre was in its heyday.
But George went missing a lot, doing disappearing acts, and as I say, he admitted going missing a lot. Miss World, Miss United Kingdom, Miss Australia. He also admitted I spent 80% of my earnings on women and drink, the rest I wasted. I got divorced from my first wife, and the judge said, Mr. Flood, I've heard all the evidence and I'm going to give Mrs. Flood £1,000 a month. And I said, thank you very much, Your Honour, I'll try and chip in a few bob myself.
Footlights have gone from theatres now, so we don't have those, and they were always a very powerful effect. You couldn't really walk on a stage without makeup on in those days, with footlights on. And before them, of course, before electricity, there were gas lights, and this theatre would have known that very well. They were highly dangerous because there were 1 or 2 cases where actresses would sweep down to the front of the stage to the raw gas lights playing on, and their dresses would catch, and there could be some very nasty accidents. In fact, several theatres, certainly in London, burnt down for that very because of that very reason. So yeah, it's but it's one of the processes that actors have to go through.
My tasks as a journalist included taking dancing from Strictly Erin Bow, and she was quite glamorous, as you know, and I went along for dancing lessons with her as well, and Heather came along, my wife, and I asked Erin if we could take some publicity, sexy publicity pictures like she posed with on those Strictly occasions with her partners, and she said sure, and she was in the process of raising her skirt slightly, but the photographer was strangely hesitant, and I couldn't make out why, because I looked round, and while Erin was saying yes, it's okay, my wife was mouthing no, it isn't. But as you can see from the book, I did get to put my hand on Erin's thigh, and it's funny, I can't see, I remember vividly dancing with her, but I can't seem to have remembered any of the steps. My age and Alan's age, I mean, we might snuff it between now and the performance. I'm the first journalist in the family and to actually take up writing, and the first to do stand-up comedy, in stark contrast to my dear old dad, who was a floor stainer. He didn't mean to be, but as he got older, he just couldn't help himself.
It doesn't matter how big you are, how great you are, or what you're known as in the business, you end up eventually in one of these chairs being ministered to by this young lady. Mm. And you can't get away with that, I'm afraid. It's just one of those things. And as you and I are going to be sharing a stage shortly, that's the reason why she's doing it. Well, there's several. In the 66 years that I've been in the entertainment business in one form or another. I started off as a 12-year-old actor in Just William. Anybody remember that on the radio? Just William? And Jennings Goes to School was another one. Now I've reached an age when no one ever remembers anything that I've ever done at all, really. But I did work very briefly with both Gielgud, Olivia, and indeed Edith Evans. Edith Evans, you know, there's a lovely story about her. She, during the war, when food rationing was on and everything was in very short supply, she lived opposite Harrods. And anyway, one day her maid said to her, I believe they got some pineapples in Harrods, ma'am. So Edith said, oh. So she went across the road and went into the shop, and she said, I understand you've got some pineapples. And the assistant said, yes. She said, well, I had one, please. So the assistant gave it, wrapped it up, wrapped up a pineapple, gave it to her. And she said, that would be 10 shillings and sixpence, please. And Edith Evans looked at her and said, 10 shillings and sixpence? Here's 11 shillings. I think I trod on a grape on the way in. You know, all the people you must have interviewed, you in all those years as a journalist, must be fascinating, surely. Yeah, I suppose the first I came across was Max Bygraves, because he used to come in my grandparents' pub. And talking about Max's, the first one I met at the
when I was young was Max Miller, but like Tommy Cooper, he had a reputation for being mean, and we met him at the interval and bought him drinks, and he said, "Oh, must buy you a drink afterwards, I'll be in here, you come in here afterwards." Of course he never turned up, and he was notorious, as was Tommy Cooper, lovely guys, but they never bought anybody a drink. They loved to take but not give on that occasion, but they gave so much pleasure on the stage, didn't they? Particularly here. I mean, they were really hero worshipped when they appeared in places like this. Another really lovely lady I met was Petula Clark, who I don't know whether you remember at the time when she was one of the biggest recording artists in the world. But the ageing process was not kind to her. She was as bubbly and lively as ever on stage, but backstage, as I say, she did look surprisingly much older than I expected. And she told me how she wanted to be an actress and wanted to be another Ingrid Bergman, but at that time when she started out, singing was the way to go, and that's how she became a top recording artist.
My favourite character appeared here, in fact, was Tommy Trinder. When I was, I suppose 6 or 7, my father took me to the London Palladium, or Victoria Palace, one of the big theatres in there. And I didn't understand really half of what the act was, but I ended up in the aisle, banging my heels on the floor and screaming with laughter. And Trinder said from the stage, "I don't know who brought that kid, but can you bring him in every night, please?" Olivia was a very kind actor to young actors, but he had a fetish. He had a thing about the knighthood and the rest of it was by the side. He didn't care too much about those, but one thing he did care about was the fact that he'd had a packet of fags named after him. Don't know if he remembers Olivia cigarettes, but he would always produce them at the most opportunity. I was very lucky to join the Old Vic repertory season, and coming across the green room was Olivia. And I smoked guards in those days, and he said to me, "What are you smoking?" And I said, "Guard, sir." It was called everybody sir in those days. And he said, "Oh, have you tried these?" And he took out this packet of Olivia's. I said, no, these have got tips. In any case, I get coupons with these. He said, "Ah." He said, "You get parts with these." I used to tell the story of when he was in digs, and every meal that got served up was fish, and the whole house was sick of the fish that kept more for breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch, you name it. This landlady cooked fish. One day she's serving up fish at the breakfast table and she dropped a knife, and she said, "Oh, that means there must be a man coming." And Trinder turned around and said, "Well, let's hope it's the bloody butcher." You know, there were all such characters on and off the stage.
When Sunday Sport was launched, the staff would phone up radio programmes and tell them how bad the paper was, how terrible articles were, in order to arouse people's interest and get them to buy the paper to see just how disgusting it was. I mean, Sunday Sport would run ridiculous stories, such as "Woman pregnant for 60 years gives birth to old age pensioner." The paper printed what it claimed to be a picture of a B-17 World War II bomber aeroplane on the moon. I mean, the mocked up picture didn't take a genius to see that it was mocked up, because it wasn't even blurred. And even Sunday Sport readers wrote in to complain, not about the picture being fake, but pointing out it was not a B-17 bomber, but a B-29.
Well, as you get further down the road into the 60s and 70s, there were one or two great variety acts, but variety in itself, of course, was suffering in those days by now. The music halls had virtually all closed. Television was beginning to look a bit askance at variety acts, so shows like the London Palladium and Saturday Night at the Palladium, those sort of things, were gradually fading out, and the great British public was turning to other things.
But loads of people have got a great fondness for the theatre.
Oh, indeed. I mean, another character, we were just looking at a plaque a moment ago, I was before you came in, Charlie Chester. Do you remember Charlie Chester?
Yeah.
He appeared here several times, not just once or twice.
Cheerful Charlie.
Cheerful Charlie Chester. Name that I'd really gone right out of my head, and then I saw that brass plaque that they've got in the theatre. God, yeah, I remember Charlie Chester.
But you knew Hilda Baker. You're not related to her.
No,
I'm
not related to Hilda.
She appeared here.
Oh yeah. So did Jewel and Morris, and of course Jimmy Jewel ended up partnering Hilda Baker in a comedy sitcoms on TV, up to the time when she really couldn't remember any more lines, and eventually it all fell apart.
The whole sports staff, including myself, walked out when it got too stupid, and they printed this story about aliens going to invade Wimbledon tennis, and of course aliens didn't invade the Wimbledon tennis, but instead of just admitting that they got it wrong, Sunday Sport went and printed a follow-up story saying that aliens were scared of rain and that's why they didn't come. Do you think there's still a big future for variety or not?
I don't know about a big future, but I think there's a place for variety. You know, when I started in this industry when I was 12, and I can remember an old actor saying to me when I was about 13 or 14, television will absolutely kill this business. Get out now while you can. Well, I'm still here.
Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you very much indeed. Really good. I was very pleased. We didn't get as many people as the all-time greats that have appeared here, like Max Miller and Charlie Chaplin, but we had a crowd who went away happy. A lot of them told me they really enjoyed it, and that's all that matters, really.